Hi everyone, I'm Sandy Anastasi, Psychic Channel, Intuitive Astrologer, and Soul Coach, and I'm here with my Psychic Protection Tip number 30. This tip is great for the holiday season, but really can be applied anytime you're traveling. In fact, it's about air travel specifically, but it could be applied to any time you're traveling in a commercial transit. This one's about air travel protection during the holidays. Folks, here's what happened to me recently, and I want to share this with you especially because following up on my vampires from October and November, this is really perfect and it fits the holiday season just wonderfully. I think this tip's especially timely, in fact, since at the moment we're entering the big winter holiday season when so many folks travel to see family and friends. I was actually in the air myself, thinking about what my psychic protection tip for this month should be, when the obvious struck me. In fact, at the moment I was using every trick in my air travel protection book. And in a moment of sheer brilliance, I knew that all of you would benefit from my experience. So let me tell you what was going on and how I used psychic protection myself to deal with it. I found myself sitting in the middle seat in the main cabin on a very crowded flight. Certainly not my favorite place to be on a 5-hour flight, but a very good opportunity to practice psychic protection. As soon as I sat down, I immediately put myself into an aura, an energy field of happiness. See Psychic Protection Tip number 28 if you want to know how to do that. And I did my breathing exercise to fill and surround myself with white light. That's tip number 12. I filled myself with a feeling of well-being. That's tip number 13. I turned up my empathy to give me conscious awareness of what I was feeling all around me. That's tip number 17. And I took my temperature frequently. That's tip number 25. So that I would constantly be aware of what was mine and what wasn't. And then I sat down. On my left receiving side, when I first sat down, was a very large gentleman. He was in the aisle seat, and interestingly, he kept his energy very tucked in, probably being polite since he was so big. It was really kind of interesting. I would have expected him to be energetically pushing at me, but he wasn't. His energy was tucked in throughout the entire flight. So even though my left side would normally be the place I would most readily be affected by the pressing of another person's energy against mine, this was surprisingly not a problem, given the large size of this guy. I took a moment to be consciously grateful. You see, gratitude, remember, gratitude always draws more good things your way. So take every opportunity as you move through life to recognize the things you need to be grateful for, and in the moment they happen, take that second to recognize and give gratitude. Just do that, folks. Do that for friends, for yourself, for the universe we live in. Express your gratefulness, and the universe will bring more and more good things your way. Meanwhile, I settled in for an enjoyable flight, happy about the empty seat to my right against the window. And that lasted until about 5 minutes after the entire plane had boarded. Finally, a tearful young woman arrived to claim that seat. Her headspace brought chaos with it. And I didn't at first concern myself. I assumed that she had a personal problem that delayed her, and her tears were perhaps saying goodbye to someone. So I kept my energy to myself and assumed that she'd get a handle on herself and soon be a good, since she was tiny, person to share my aisle with, my seat. It's interesting to note how the emotional distress, though, of one person, if it's projected powerfully enough onto others, can create a wave of chaos. There was immediate discord, lots of arguments and stress all over the area around where we were sitting, starting the moment she sat down. Interestingly, this tiny woman also took up all of her seat. She spread out in her seat so that I found myself hunching. You remember you've done this? Hunching down, trying to be small so as not to affect her, but she was energetically and emotionally projecting herself all over the plane. Several people who were obviously unconsciously empathic healers called out to the young woman, asking if she was all right and if there was anything that they could do. I remained quiet and I observed, both visually and energetically. I was beginning to get a message here. As she moved past me initially to sit down, I had noted that she reeked of alcohol. Having some experience regarding the neediness of alcoholics, I immediately put up a mirror all around myself, facing out, just in case she had had more than a few drinks, not because of airplane travel stress, but because of an addiction. With some difficulty, I held on to my centered space that I had already created. That should tell you something. I had already created that space, and it was still somewhat difficult to hold on to it. While I got my protective mirrors in place, that's tip number 1, incidentally, all was well again. In fact, I was able to project feelings of happiness and calmness out towards all the people around us who had turned chaotic. They quickly settled down. But the woman next to me, who wanted to be in that chaotic, emotional, stressful space, continued to project. As soon as she was in her seat, she had begun to fidget, bumping into me as much as she could to get my attention, and I ignored her. My mirrors held. Since that didn't work, she began to talk to me. I'm so afraid of flying, I had to have several drinks in order to get on the plane. I told her I am a seasoned flyer. Nothing bad has ever happened to any plane I was on. Just relax and enjoy the flight. See tip number 17. Again, regarding dealing with things first, right here on the physical plane. Deal with them first, here. So tip number 17 told me I should deal with her directly first, which is just what I did. I really thought that had resolved things, but thankfully I maintained my usual and my added-on protections. Because on takeoff, I suddenly felt an iron grip enclose my hand. I was so glad she was on my right, protected side. In fact, that right side is your projective side. So my right protected and projected side. It made it easier to keep the mirror up and to keep her projection of energy out, because when she grabbed my hand, there was this blast of energy that came along with it. So I kept my protection up, and I added a psychic glove. I teach that in my level 2 class, and those of you who've got my books, level 2 is the one where I teach to protect against energy when you're touching someone or holding their hand. In this case, her holding me. Note to self, these tools need to be part of a future psychic protection tip, because they're good tips. Thankfully, she let go once we were in the air and immersed herself in her cell phone, which she never turned off, by the way. I had still not totally evaluated her nature, as my psychic ethics require that I be non-invasive with people. I gave her the benefit of the doubt, a normal person afraid of flying. Then, after 3 or 4 more grab-ons and screams and crying experiences, each time we hit a tiny air bump, I realized that her antics were not only drawing the attention of every person in the vicinity on the plane, they were actually spreading fear through the plane, which emotion she could feed on. See vampires. That's psychic protection tip number 28. Worse still, the combined emotionally projected energy of all the people around us was drawing more of the air pockets and hence air bumps our way. So a very smooth flight where the weather was good was now turning turbulent. I immediately strengthened my protections and using my exhalation to carry my energy outward, I spread calm and happy energy through the cabin. The turbulence smoothed out. That combined emotional energy of many people focused can be very powerful. Remember that. It's really important to make sure group focus is always on good things. I psychically tuned into her finally, just reading and feeling what was in the most superficial layer of her energy field, her aura. She was indeed an alcoholic. She, in fact, had been put on the plane by someone really wanting to get rid of her, who was sending her back to her family to take care of her. Maybe some of those tears really were real, I thought. The next time we hit an air pocket and the plane bounced, she started to go into her hysterics again. And I said to her, you know, when you project that fear of turbulence, you only attract more of it to us. If you really want it to start, you really want it to stop happening, start thinking about happy things in your life. Replace your fear with a happy place that you find inside of yourself. Go there. And I projected a very gentle nudge of happy towards her, which she immediately rejected. In fact, when I then surrounded her with a mirror, reflective side facing towards her, so she would no longer be projecting this negativity towards me and everyone else. If she didn't want to be happy and let go of her imagined fear and negative emotions, she had a right to them. But she did not have a right to project the negativity on me and the other people on the plane. So, of course, remember, I remembered to remove that mirror before she left the plane when we disembarked. But in that moment, when I realized what she was doing, she was feeding on all this terror and hurt she was causing, I mirrored her, mirror side in. She was truly a vampire, and I had caught her at it. Again, see Psychic Protection tip number 28. During the remainder of the flight, she waged a one-sided war against me. All vampires are intrinsically psychic. She knew who was preventing the flow of energy towards her, who was preventing her getting that focused energy she was relying on collecting. So her antics became physical. She dropped a glass of some sort of liquor on the floor at my feet, told me it was too bad it wasn't in my lap. She poured water on me and on the floor several times. She climbed over me and my seatmate at least 6 times during the flight. Finally, when none of that got a reaction, she cursed me out. I ignored it all, maintaining my happy, relaxed aura consciously. I mirrored herself back at her. My seatmate had long since complained to the stewardesses, who stopped serving her liquor, but they seemed at a loss regarding what else to do. Thankfully, my protections kept her antics from invading the rest of the plane, and the rest of the flight was blissfully smooth, not bumpy, and totally uneventful. Please do use these strategies and these insights anytime you travel by plane, by bus, by train, any commercial carrier. They'll definitely help to get you to your destination more safely and in the right frame of mind to enjoy your trip. And for still more holiday protection tips, see my Psychic Protection tip number 18. That'll finish the job. I wish you all a safe, peaceful, harmonious, and happy holiday season. Love to you all. This is Sandy Anastasi, Visit my website, www.sandyanastasia.com, for more